Beloved brethren, I'm thankful to the Lord for the opportunity of being here with you today. It is actually my first time here in the Washington area, and I can meet new people here. I can also meet some people I've met before, and I'm thankful for all of them to the Lord. And I'm especially thankful for this opportunity of studying together a little bit out of God's Word. And I would like to invite you to open your Bibles in Luke chapter 10, and let us read from verse 25 on. And behold, a lawyer stood up to put him to the test, saying, "Teacher, what shall I do to inherit eternal life?" He said to him, "What is written in the law? How do you read it?" And he answered, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself." And he said unto him, "You have answered correctly. Do this, and you will live." Now, this question has not been just an isolated incident of one person asking one question. This question has actually concerned many people in many generations. You live now in the United States. It's a country which many people look up to, and they hope and dream that if one day they have the chance of getting there, then there they will become happy. But I guess if you'd count, there are happy and unhappy people here as well as everywhere else around the world, because happiness is not really connected to what you have or what you don't have, but happiness is a kind of attitude which you have towards life, towards what happens around you. And no matter where people live, they know that their life is granted them for a period of time, after which they are supposed to die. You know, there is this kind of saying, there are two things in life you cannot escape. One is taxes and the other one is death. Therefore, many of them keep asking this question: is there a way not just to get a good life for, let's say, 40, 50, 60 years, but to get eternal life? And if there's a way to get that, what is this way? Does this have something to do with my actions? How am I supposed to live? What am I supposed to do in order to inherit eternal life? And one of these people had the chance of asking this question at the right source. But instead of answering the question, Jesus asked another question: what is written in the law? Because apparently the answer was already there. So the man starting quoting the essence of the law of God. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and your neighbor as yourself. And then Jesus said, well done. Just do it and you will live. It's that simple. And for us, the main point to understand is that salvation has something to do with the way we love. With the way we love God and with the way we love our neighbors. God is love, and we are supposed to become like Him. Not just to have love, but to be love. And there was a very nice quotation which the sister read during the Sabbath school, saying that it's not enough to love, but you're supposed to express this love. Not to be so selfish as to keep it for yourself. And she read that quotation saying that many husbands are too selfish to express their love. I don't think they are really that selfish, but they are a little bit scared. Because, among men, they say, if you tell your wife you love her, then she will try to exploit it a little bit. And she will say, well, if you love me, then why not buy me this and that? And so they'd rather love them in silence, It's just enough to love them. They are not supposed to be told that, because they are actually a little bit scared of the consequences of saying that in a very convincing manner, But bottom line is that, as we read in the last part of Romans 13:10, love is the fulfilling of the law. Romans 13:10, love, last part says, love is the fulfilling of the law. So actually the 10 principles mentioned in the law of God are just 10 different aspects of love. Are what the sister called during the Sabbath school the practical aspects, how love comes through in the practical daily life. So when we behold the law, we should understand that it's all about love. Love is the fulfilling of the law, and fulfilling this law, we actually think like God, feel like God, act like God. And if you remember the Bible verse which the brother read in the introduction, it was 1 John 3:18, saying, my little children, let us not love in word, neither in tongue, but in deed and in truth. They did a survey. There were these family ministries, and they asked some guys, some male people, does your wife love you? And they said, yes. Then the next question was, but does your wife like you? And they said, no. So that was their feeling. They knew that their wives kind of loved them because they used to cook, they used to clean, they used to take care of the children, they used to do lots of things. So, okay, my wife loves me. But does she like you? And they were very sure about the answer, no. Why? Because they kept being criticized all the day long. So they said, okay, she loves me because of what she does, but when it comes to being liked, how can she like me if all the day long I get all this negative input and feedback and whatever? So that is a kind of love that might be expressed verbally, but that is not enough. We should learn how to love one another practically, in deed and in truth. And it is actually this feeling of being loved which makes the difference between happiness and unhappiness. A long time ago, I organized a children's camp. So many little children came around, and I asked them a question. What needs to happen in order for you to be happy? What do you need to have or to feel or to experience or to do in order to feel happy? We were up there in the mountains, so they thought a little bit, and they noticed that one guy was passing by with this ATV, this all-terrain vehicle, like a motorcycle on 4 wheels, you know. And that was so exciting for them. They said, okay, in order to be happy, we need an ATV. Once you've got that, that's the perfect definition for happiness. You just ride the thing and you're happy. And as children, we might also have had our concepts about happiness. Maybe happiness was associated to eating some cookies or candy or playing soccer or whatever, getting some special toy, and that was happiness. You can see them watching the stores and the shelves, and they stop in front of some object and they keep looking at it. And you can imagine what's going on in their mind. They say, okay, if daddy could buy me this car, that would be happiness to go home and, you know. Or the girls, they might see a nice doll and say, if I could take her home, I would take care of her and feed her and put her to sleep, and that would be kind of happiness. As we grow, we start thinking more maturely. And of course, there is a time in our lives when we still associate the notion of happiness with some material possessions. It's no longer a toy or a doll, but it might be a car, special brand, special color, many horsepower, or a house or a property, and all this kind. Maybe some people have academic dreams to become a famous person, to get some degrees, and they associate happiness with that kind of status. But finally, when they are really mature in their thinking, they realize that happiness has something to do with love. To love somebody and to be loved. So they expect happiness as the result of a relationship, friendship, love, rather than with material objects. And this is actually the result of a need they have. We all have the need of being loved, of being accepted, of being appreciated. And when this kind of need is fulfilled, we just feel happy. And when it goes unfulfilled, we might have all the material properties in the world and still feel kind of lonely, and we would just know that something is missing. You know, Adam had the same feeling. He was living in paradise. What can be better or more wonderful than paradise? You know, that's the very definition of perfection. So he was living in paradise. He got some job to do, to call all those animals and to remember how he called them. But finally he noticed that something was still missing. He couldn't really define what was missing because he didn't have that experience. But somehow he saw that, well, there needs to be some kind of companion for him in order that he should be able to fully enjoy the beauties of the paradise. And it's the same with human nature throughout time, because God created us as social beings, and we can only reach our fullest potential in this kind of fellowship. You know, even the baby, as soon as a baby is born, it's got some physical needs. It needs the proper temperature not too cold, not too hot. It needs to be fed. It needs to be kept clean. But what do you notice very soon? You take the baby in your arms and it's happy. You put it down and what happens? It starts crying. You take it back, it smiles again. You put it back, it cries again. So the baby has this need to feel close to someone, to feel protected, to feel taken care of. And it might be clean, it might be well fed, but if you leave it alone and it starts feeling miserable again and expressing it in a very vocal manner. Now, this is not necessarily a physical need, but it is what they call an emotional need. The need of being loved. If one of our physical needs is not attended to, we simply die. If there's no air, we die. No food for a longer period of time, we die. No water, we die. No proper temperature, we die. About emotional needs, we don't necessarily die when they are not met. But sometimes we wish we would. Because we cannot enjoy life. We say, that's no life, you know. We don't physically die, but there's this pain and this suffer and this anguish. So an emotional need is that type of craving which, when it is satisfied, makes us feel happy and fulfilled, and when it goes unsatisfied, makes us feel unhappy and frustrated. Now, these emotional needs are not just for babies. You know, they continue to exist when the baby becomes an adult. The only difference is that an adult person learns how to conceal them. So we don't just go out on the street and start shouting, I want to get some love. You know, that's what a baby is doing in its own language. We still have this need, but we try to behave decently and to disguise this need so that nobody else knows about it, because it's kind of shameful to ask for something and not to get it, and then people might laugh at you and ridicule you, so you'd rather keep silent. But to be honest, we all know that the need is there. Sometimes people get married and they still have that need. And you know, when this need goes unattended for a longer period of time, then you will notice some kind of funny reactions. You go home and you find your wife crying, and as a man you get scared. You think, who died? So what's wrong, honey? What happened? And she says, nothing happened. So why are you crying? I don't know, I just feel like crying. But nothing special happened. Now this is a sign, just one of those signs, that there are some emotional needs which went unmet for a longer period of time. So then you should think, when was it the last time I told her I loved her? When was it the last time I brought her a bunch of flowers and told her how happy I am because she's there, and how happy I am about our relationship? You just neglect to do that, and you might find her crying for no reason, apparently, you know. But there always is a reason. The same thing can happen with husbands. You know, they actually don't really cry, but they might get angry for no reason, you know. And sometimes the wives can no longer understand the world. So what's wrong with this guy? He's got good food, he's got a clean house, nothing is missing, so why is he like a bomb, always about to get off, this kind of sensitivity and getting angry, apparently for no reason. This can also give a message to the wives about the fact that some of his emotional needs went unattended for a longer period of time, that he feels kind of neglected. And now the question is that just a weakness of the human nature that we have these emotional needs? Are we supposed to feel guilty about them? Or is it just okay for us to feel like that because we are humans? Are we supposed just to get rid of them and to behave like some robots, just doing our daily program without having all these kind of feelings? Or is it better for us to accept them as they are, to understand them, and to learn how to deal with them? Therefore, I'd like us to consider several examples. 2 Timothy 1, 15 to 17. This is a report about one of the strongest characters of the Bible, which was the Apostle Paul. And he says, "This you know, that all those in Asia have turned away from me, of whom are Phygellus and Hermogenes. May the Lord give mercy to the house of Onesiphorus, for he often refreshed me, and was not ashamed of my chain. But when he was in Rome, he sought me out very diligently and found me." Is it the same in your Bibles? Second. Yeah? Okay. So, there's this apostle in the prison. And in prison, they still want to keep those people alive. So they give them some water, they give them some food. So they are kind of attended to in terms of physical needs. But there was a disappointment there. He says, all those in Asia have turned away from me. In other words, he says, I was left alone. With one notable exception. It says, may the Lord give mercy to the house of Onesiphorus, for he often refreshed me. So how did Onesiphorus refresh him? Did he bring him some ice cream? Some soda? What do you think? Verse 17 tells us what that refreshing meant. He sought me out very diligently and found me. So this refreshing was in terms of genuine companionship. He didn't turn his back upon me. He came back and he found me and he spent some quality time to me, which gave me the feeling that I'm not alone and deserted. 2 Timothy 4:16, he says, at my first answer no one was beside me, but all deserted me. May it not be laid to their charge. It's interesting for me that he finds it worthwhile mentioning these experiences which he had to go through, which were kind of psychological torture. You know what the worst thing in prison was? The worst punishment? Isolation. They would put the people alone in a small cell and let them there for months. Just provide them with water and some scarce kind of food, but nobody to talk to. Some of them even forgot how to speak. When they were released from prison, they had to learn the language again, just like babies, because they spent that much time not having whom to talk to. Many of them went out of their minds. They just got crazy because of this. And the stronger characters, they kept talking to themselves in order to make life bearable. And the Apostle Paul went through a similar kind of disappointment, not because there was no other way, but because it was the choice of the people just to turn their backs to him. And that's why it was so welcome when Onesiphorus and his house, they went and visited him and gave him some of this fellowship. Now, if we read, for instance, in Mark chapter 14, 32 to 37, there is this story which you all know about Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. And he was just about to pass through some very critical moments. It was actually there that the fate of mankind was about to be decided upon. And he felt that he needed some human companionship. And not any kind of companionship. So he chose the closest of his friends, namely Peter, James, and John. And he asked them to come with him and to watch. They couldn't actually help him in any practical way, but just the fact of their being there and feeling together with him would have been a relief for him. So in verse 34, he said to them, "My soul is exceedingly sorrowful to death. Stay here and watch." And verse 37 says, "And he came and found them sleeping, and said to Peter, Simon, do you sleep? Could you not watch 1 hour?" You know? Sometimes family also has the same problem. One needs companionship and the other one goes sleeping, you know? And you lay down and you say, "I'm as lonely as ever, you know? What's the use of having one snoring beside me?" He came back and he found him sleeping. Now, the Desire of Ages, page 687, we read that the human heart longs for sympathy in suffering. This longing Christ felt to the very depths of his being. If he could only know that his disciples understood and appreciated this, he would be strengthened. So the human heart longs for sympathy because it's human. And even Christ himself, he felt this longing to the very depths of his being. But instead of that, he had a similar experience, just like Paul. If we read Mark 14:50, it says, "And leaving him, all fled." When he got arrested, everyone deserted him. And one was so keen to save his life, that verse 52, it says, he left the linen cloth and fled from them naked. So he just ran for his life. He forgot about shame. He forgot about everything. He just wanted to be away. Now, in Matthew 25, 34 to 36, we can read about an illustration of the judgment. Matthew 25, 34 to 36. Then the king shall say to those on his right hand, come, blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you took me in. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick. Okay. And you visited me. What are these things? What kind of needs are they? Kind of physical needs. But then the last part says, I was in prison and you came to me. So this is not that much of a physical need, but an emotional need. I was in prison and you came to me. And this is also one of the reasons why they will hear the words, come, blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you. And if we read on from verse 41 to 45, now we can read the same story in the negative. Then he also shall say to those on the left hand, depart from me, you cursed, into everlasting fire prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry and you gave me no food. I was thirsty and you gave me no drink. I was a stranger, you didn't take me in. I was naked and you did not clothe me. You did not attend to my physical needs. But then it says, I was sick and in prison, and you did not visit me. So actually, being indifferent to some people's emotional needs may make us guilty. It's not an active type of sin, but a passive kind of one. You know, we can become guilty by commission or by omission, by what we are supposed to do, but we neglect to. And now, of course, if you heard that Jesus was in prison right here in New York, I'm sure you'd go and visit him and bring him all kind of good stuff and spend time with him. I'm sure all of you would do that. But if we read verse 45, that's kind of shocking. Because it says, truly I say to you, inasmuch as you did not do it to one of the least of these, you did not do it to me. So actually, we need to recognize Jesus in all our fellows around. And to understand they also have these needs for a kind word, for a word of encouragement, for you just being there when they need you around. And Jesus said, you don't do it to them, you haven't done it to me. Which puts quite a great responsibility upon our shoulders. First Testimony 695. It says, love can no more exist without revealing itself in outward acts than fire can be kept alive without fuel. So, you cannot just have love and keep it inside. It cannot exist without revealing itself. It's easy to have this abstract kind of love. We say we love people because we don't hurt them, we don't harm them, we just leave them alone. And that's the proof of our love, because we don't do anything bad unto them. But that's not enough. We are supposed to love the people in a positive manner, to get involved in some of their troubles, in some of their problems, in some of their concerns, and to be there for them when they need us. Otherwise, it's not love. Ministry of Healing 360 says, there are many who regard the expression of love as a weakness. What I was telling you in the beginning, well, that's for women, that's for, They regard the expression of love as a weakness. And they maintain a reserve that repels others. Even some ministers may commit this mistake. They are so formal, so official, they never get into a relationship with you on a personal level, just from man to man, from soul to soul. They just come here, they give you the sermon, they close the Bible, and you see him again the other week. So they have no clue what your life is really like, what your troubles are, and this can also happen in the family. They have this term, they call it a black box in technology. What's the black box? It's something you don't know what's inside, you just have input and output, but you don't know what's going on there. It's a black box. Yeah. And sometimes the mind of our spouse can be like a black box for us. We just know if there's this kind of input, there will be that kind of output, that kind of feedback. But what she really thinks, what she really feels, what's going on there, you have no clue about that, and you are even afraid to find out because it might not be too good for you. And since these people believe that the expression of love is a kind of weakness, they maintain a reserve that repels other ones. They keep distance, But what about God? What was he ashamed to tell us that he loved us? No. Just read John 3:16. And he was God, not such a tiny creature on a tiny planet. And we are so big and so proud and with so much, let's call it dignity, that we say it's below our dignity to express our love. And the testimony says, in the same paragraph, we should beware of this error. Love cannot long exist without expression. Let not the heart of one connected with you starve for the want of kindness and sympathy. No, it's not just the stomach which can starve. It's actually also the heart which can starve because of you neglecting to say those nice, kind words, which, by the way, will not make you poorer. They don't cost anything. You can do that without losing anything. So how come we don't do it more often and in a more convincing manner? It says, let not the heart of one connected with you starve for the want of kindness and sympathy. Now, there's a story about this, which we need to understand. Not everybody perceives love in the same manner. asked men and women to make a list of their emotional needs and to put them in the order of their priority. Number 1, number 2, number 3, up to 10. So, again, the emotional needs are those things which make them feel happy when they are fulfilled and make them feel miserable when they go unmet. And they ask men and women to do that. And guess what the outcome was? The lists were reversed, totally different. The top 5 for the ladies were the last 5 for the man, and the other way around. For instance, you might have a lady who feels very happy when you talk to her. Conversation was number 1 on the list. For man, well, conversation is good, but not necessarily number 1. You know, they've got their number 1. Then they came to the conclusion there's no wonder that actually they cannot understand one another, because you go and bring your husband a bunch of flowers every day, so what will his reaction be? Well, what shall I do with those now? Where? You know, you do the same to a lady and she will be the most happy person on earth. You know. So, we are supposed actually to understand the psychology of our spouse, the way he thinks and feels, and she thinks and feels, you know. You go and tell him a story and sing him a song before he goes to sleep, and after 2 weeks he will start getting angry for no reason, because that was not exactly what his expectation was, okay? So, in Matthew 7:9, it says, "Or what man is there of you, if his son asks a loaf, will give him a stone? Or if he asks a fish, will give him a snake?" So make sure you understand what he asks for. And then you can meet him on that level. Give him exactly what he appreciates most and what makes him feel most comfortable. Because if you love him on your own terms, your message might not be understood by the other one. You know, I will just give you an example. There's a kind of food which I like very much, but my son is not at all interested in eating that kind of food. He doesn't even look towards it, you know. So if I apply my rules to my relationship with my son, and I will try to make him happy by feeding him with my favorite food for 2 weeks, he might go to his grandparents to get something different to eat, because that's not the way he perceives being loved. The same way as spouses, we are supposed to give to the other one what his soul needs, what he asks for. Not to give them what we want. The same story was with the sacrifice of Cain and Abel. Cain said, "Okay, Lord, this is what I like, this is what I give you. You take it or leave it. This is the way I want to express my appreciation." And it was not accepted, because it was not what God required and expected. And we should also be smart enough to realize this difference and, you know, to fire very targeted. To fire at a target, not to fire all around. Hopefully one bullet will get the target. And there is this danger that we misapply Matthew 7:12. Therefore, all things whatsoever you that men should do to you, do ye even so to them. That is true in a very generical manner. But, if a wife loves getting flowers and she will start bringing flowers to her husband every day, as I said, that will not help too much. So we should be aware not to misapplying this verse and loving the other one on our own terms. Instead of that, there's a better way of doing it. 1 Corinthians 9:19. It's again the Apostle Paul saying, "For though I be free from all men, yet have I made myself servant unto all, that I may gain the more." He said, I made myself a servant. What is the servant like? He identifies the will of the master, and then he fulfills it. And this was the key to his success. I made myself servant. And the last part of verse 22 says, I am made all things to all men, that I might by all means save some. So there was this availability, this flexibility, this readiness of him adapting to the profile of the people he had to deal with. In business they understand how to do this. They create all kind of customer profiles. And then they target their advertisement based on these profiles. Some of us notice we just open our Google mailbox and we get kind of personalized advertisements based on the searches we used to do before. So they are smart enough to identify our profile and to adapt their offer to it. Why shouldn't we do the same in our personal relationships? Colossians 4:6 says, let your speech be always with grace, seasoned with salt, that ye may know how ye ought to answer every man. So there is no universal answer. You give the same answer to everybody. That will not work. You need to personalize, to customize your answer, that you should know how you ought to answer every man. An interesting example of that was of the apostles when they started speaking in tongues. And in Acts 2:8, they were wondering, how hear we every man in our own tongue, wherein we were born? You don't go to a Russian girl and say, I love you. That will mean something for her, but if you say, Я люблю тебя, that will make a big difference, because it's her language. It's the language of her soul. And, there are languages, love languages, which people understand. Somebody may appreciate gifts, somebody may appreciate conversations, somebody may appreciate whatever, physical intimacy, somebody may appreciate just this physical proximity and touches and a hug and whatever. There are different kind of people. Some may appreciate domestic help. You just help her wash dishes and she will be the most happy person in the world because she feels that you are there, you are concerned about what she is doing, and you are ready to help, to get involved. Not all the people are the same. That's why we should understand also their love languages. There is even a book written about that. It's called The 5 Love Languages. And as Christians, we should be wise enough how to apply these things to offer that kind of emotional support which our spouse needs. There's a testimony in second volume of Mind, Character and Personality, page 424. It says, "It is because the minds of men differ and do not comprehend things in exactly the same way. Some truths appeal much more strongly to the minds of one class of persons than to others. Some points appear to be much more important to some than to others." So we are not just the same. And the minds of people differ. Some points appear to be much more important to some than to others. But what should we do with this difference? It says in the same book, "It is not God's purpose that any two persons shall be exactly alike in tastes and dispositions. All have characteristics peculiar to themselves, and these are not to be destroyed, but they are to be recognized and accepted as such, because those characteristics are part of those things which make our spouse being a unique being. If we allow peculiarities of character and disposition to separate us here, how can we hope to live together in heaven? We are to cherish love and respect for one another, to appreciate him or her just as he is, and to accept him and her like that, not trying to change him in such a way that he fits into our pattern of thought. We are almost done, but let us read Proverbs 27:19. "As in water, face answers to face, so the heart of man to man." So an answer supposes that there was a question there. And, we were at school, they were giving us all these tests, but the teacher always told us, before trying to solve the problem, make sure you understand the question. Make sure you understand what is expected of you. And only after you understand the requirement, you start solving the problem. Otherwise, children are kind of hasty. They just want to get rid of the exam, of that pressure, whatever, and they start answering a question which was not there. And by doing that, they miss answering the actual question. The same way, we need to understand the question and the longing and the expectation of our spouses, of our partner's heart, and then answer it into their language and to that very topic, not beat around the bush, because that will not bring any benefit. So the heart of man answers to man. And one last quotation from the Adventist Home, page 106. It says, "Though difficulties, perplexities, and discouragements may arise, let neither husband nor wife harbor the thought that their union is a mistake or a disappointment. Determined to be all that it is possible to be to each other." That means make yourself available. Manifest this readiness of being flexible and of adapting yourself. Determined to be all that it is possible to be to each other. Continue the early attentions. In every way, encourage each other in fighting the battles of life. Study to advance the happiness of each other. We might have neglected this task to a certain extent up to now. But you remember, salvation has to do with the way we love. And we are not able to love our closest ones in such a way as to meet their emotional needs and to make them happy. How are we able to love the world as such? And it is our challenge to study how to advance the happiness of each other, how to promote it. And it is my wish and prayer that these thoughts might have made us a little bit more sensitive about this topic, and let us reconsider a little bit the quality of our relationship, and especially our willingness to meet our spouses on their own ground and to deliver what we actually promised the day we got into this relationship, that we will be there for good and bad, willing and ready to meet and satisfy all their needs. And that is part of our obedience to God and of the practical way of loving one another as God told us when He said, "Let us not love in word, neither in tongue, but in deed and in truth." And may the Lord help us unto that. Amen.
Amen.